There was no better time to trade Jonathan India than right now.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Reds. We are your daily source for all things Cincinnati Reds. I'm Stephen Offenbaker. He's Jeff Carr. We love baseball, and we have a combined 14 years almost experience of covering the Cincinnati Reds in podcast form. We love the Cincinnati Reds. We've taken our love for the game, our love for this team. We've turned it into information for you. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And on today's podcast, we are going to tell you why this was exactly the right time for the Reds to make this move with Jonathan India. We're also going to dig into the recent analysis we've seen, analysis in air quotes, I think, floating around that now the Reds need to go get an infielder. You got to be kidding me. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And of course, since we are live here on YouTube, we're going to get into your questions, your comments, and your thoughts on what the Cincinnati Reds are doing, what they should be doing, and what they will be doing moving forward. We got all of that for you on today's show that's brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets back if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Jeff, I think where we should get started is to kind of circle back one more time on this Jonathan India deal and why this was the right time for the Reds to make it. I was wrapped up at the ER when the news broke, so you had to kind of go live by yourself, which is a challenge. Good job on that. I tried to jump in the comments and drive things a little bit while I was ignoring the other things I was supposed to be doing, but I didn't really get to weigh in on this thing. And, I did say at the time in the comment section while you were talking that I like this deal. I like the trade. I think this is one of those rare deals where both teams got something that they needed. One team really didn't fleece the other. This is kind of a win-win all the way around. And I think it's a win for Jonathan India. The speculation is over. The constant questions are done. The mystery of will he be, won't he be, where is he going to play, what is he going to do, all that's solved for him. So the Reds win, the Royals win, India wins. I think it's a win.
Yeah, and I think that there were two reasons why this was the perfect time to do this. I mean, obviously, the Reds needed rotation depth, and they helped out that need big time with this trade. But on the other side of this, the two reasons that I really think about this from the Jonathan India perspective. Number one, this is the best I think he is. I don't know how much better he can get. And number two, this flows with what Nick Krall has kind of been saying he wants to do. This flows with the model that you and I had kind of laid out for what Nick Krall has been saying he wants to operate this roster with, where you trade guys with multiple years of team control. And I kind of want to start out with that because taking the personality side out of this, Jonathan India is a solid player. He's not going to knock your socks off with his production. There was never a time after his Rookie of the Year season where you were just like, this is the best player on this team. But at the same moment, he can fill in a lot of different holes. His on-base ability that he gained from last season really makes him an attractive leadoff option for a team like the Royals, who is looking to improve their on-base percentage. And on the other side of this spectrum, I think that the 2 years of team control is really where this is the most important, because if you trade him next year, you're getting prospects. You don't trade a guy in their contract year, in their final year of team control, without some sort of risk for the team that is acquiring him. And unless you're going to trade him for another guy whose deal is expiring at the end of the year, it's going to be for prospects. And the Reds didn't need prospects right now. If we saw a trade of Jonathan India for X amount of prospects, I think both of us were going to get on here and say, why did you do that now? This trade helps out the Reds now, and it does so in a good way. And this was the best value I think you were going to get for Jonathan India.
No, I think it was. And one of the things you have to look at here too is why doing it now matters for 2025. And I think that the Reds are in agreement with us I you can do with that whatever you will, but it's pretty clear what the team needs are, right? Like, this is not rocket science what this team needs. They need the outfielder. They needed to solidify the starting pitching, and they needed to kind of get settled with the bullpen and have a spot and have somebody good on the back end. So right. Which one of those things do you tackle first? Which one of those things is probably the hardest to get done? The hardest thing to get done was to stabilize the rotation. The hardest thing to get done was to add a starter if you were going to add a starter. The pieces started falling, right, with Nick Martinez taking that qualifying offer and coming back. That was part of the stabilization of the rotation, addition by not addition. I don't know how you want to look at that, except that he was locked up. You knew you could count on him. And at $21 million, he's not pitching the 6th inning out of the bullpen. The guy's going to be a starting pitcher. So you answered the question. Then you were able to take what your excess is. Who is our excess? What is our excess? What is the Reds' position of strength? The Reds' position of strength is the infield in general. And then who is the guy that's expendable? That's another easy question to answer. You look around the room, you're not going to be able to deal Candelario for something significant. The next guy on the list is Jonathan India, because everybody else is young, full of potential, and has a long, long time of team control remaining. So by default, it was Jonathan India. And then to be able to go out and make the deal they made with the Kansas City Royals to bring in a guy that's going to get you 30 plus starts, that's going to get you 175 plus innings of reliable starting pitcher work, answers the question of the rotation. And now it lets you say, okay, what is the next most important thing? I think outfield's the next thing they're going to address, Jeff, because
100%.
We're in the list. That's the very next thing. That's the very next glaring big problem that the Reds need to address now that they've fixed the starting rotation. So I like getting this done now. I like getting the questions answered. I like what it means for Jonathan India to be able to kind of plan his life with plenty of time in the offseason he's got to move and get a new place to live and all those things. So I love that for him, that it didn't happen during spring training, or, he has some to get settled in. And then this allows the Reds to move forward. And really, we don't have to speculate anymore. We don't have to spend weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks talking about if Jonathan India is going to play left field. We don't have to do that now.
Thank God. Yeah. And I mean, hey, they give him plenty of time too to go out to KC and find his favorite barbecue joint. He'll be able to learn that. That's a good thing. I mean, you want to give a lot of time to that. But I also see this perspective too, because I've seen a lot of folks that are mad about this trade, but I'm curious, and I'd like y'all to jump in the comments section if you are mad about this trade, because the only reason that I've seen is a subjective reason. Well, he was a great leader, or I really liked him, or, things like that. It was personality wise. And there's an article in the Inquirer by Dave Clark about the top memories of Jonathan India's 4 years in Cincinnati. And Steve, half of these memories on this list were a lot of personal stuff. Like, one of the memories of Jonathan India's 4 years in Cincinnati was when he got engaged. Like, all power, like, great for him. That's fantastic. But we want to win ball games, man. Like, getting engaged don't win you World Series. I'm sorry to say it. Like, I've been married. The Reds ain't won a World Series yet. So I think that there was a good comment, and I went back and I looked at it on the live show from the trade reaction, and somebody said this. It says, like, there's a feeling about India. It says, I'm emotionally attached to him, and that's all well and good, but I'd rather the team win than the team keep players that I'm emotionally attached to. And I think that's really where the feeling of the folks that didn't like this deal, like, I would like to hear an objective reason. Give me an analytical reason as to why this trade is bad, because I don't see it. I don't see that either team really won this. I saw one article that said that the Reds actually won the deal, and they gave the Reds like a B plus, and they gave the Royals a C plus. But I don't agree. I don't think there was a.
Well, I can make you can make the argument here. Let me make the argument how the Reds won this trade. Last season, 2024, Jonathan India, a 1.7 wins above replacement, and his OPS plus was 105. So if we're using our wins above replacement chart, he wasn't quite a major leaguer, because that's a 2. Right. Yeah, so just below it. Now, I'm not saying he belonged in Louisville, but I mean,
No.
that's just the way the chart works. He was 1.7. You look at his OPS plus, he was 105. So 5% better than league average. So, I mean, that's better than being league average or less, but it's not that much better. Then you jump over and you look at Brady Singer, whose WAR last season was 3.1. That's a starter. That's a bona fide starter using WAR at the major league level. So and I don't like ERA plus as a measuring tool, really, Jeff, but if we're going to use a plus, because I used OPS plus and I use ERA plus, he was 14% better than league average. So in both of those statistical categories that take into account kind of overall performance, Singer's better than India in both categories. So if you want to try and to make a pitch to make you feel better because you liked India and you hate to see him go and you need to be able to say, oh, the Reds won this deal though. Well, there you go. In those statistical categories, they in fact did. But I don't need that for me to like this deal, because I like how it sets up everything else. I like this pitcher that's coming back. And I saw people kind of poo-pooing him a little bit. And these are the people I think that were having some personal feels about Jonathan India going, right? And I get it. It's a good player. And I think we viewed all of Jonathan India's career in Cincinnati through that rookie of the year lens, right? Like, oh, he was the rookie of the year. He's so good. Well, things change over time. And I think Jonathan India really, if we're being honest, never quite fulfilled his promise, never quite fulfilled what we thought he was going to be based on how he looked his first full Major League Baseball season, right? That rookie of the year season. He never really just built upon that. Like, he kind of just hung around and teased us with the idea that he could be that guy, teased us with the idea that there was more we were going to get and there would be flashes of it and we would never quite get it. So I think, we did that thing we do with all the players in Cincinnati. We hype them up. We build them up to an unreasonable level of what it is we think they're going to be able to do. And then they don't quite ever get there. And I think we did that with Jonathan India too. I like this deal, Jeff. I like the fact that 179 and 2/3 innings is coming our way of starting pitching reliability. I like 32 starts in 2024 from Singer. I like that coming our way. I like the idea that if you look at it on paper now, we have a 5-man starting rotation, not including Rhett Lauder, that a lot of people are a little tweaked about, but he's going to get his starts because he'll be the 6th man. He'll fill in when you need to fill in. And nowhere on that list do I see the words bullpen day. I love this trade.
Yeah, and we'll definitely discuss a little bit more about Rhett Lauder later in the show, but as it comes to Jonathan India, perfect time to trade him. But with this Jonathan India trade, that doesn't mean that the Reds need to go replace the infield, and if that's what you're thinking, you're wrong. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off site-wide during their cyber sale at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. With 5 generations of experience, Omaha Steaks consistently delivers the world's best steak experience, and their gifting experts have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide during the cyber sale at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with the promo code MLB and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. Minimum purchase may apply. We are talking Reds today, here, every day, all week, all month, all year long. Make sure you subscribe to get at least 30 minutes of Reds talk in your feed every single day. All right, Steve, with this Jonathan India trade, there are some, and it's not just folks on social media. I've seen some analysis from folks in different publications and different shows and things like this that are wondering, should the Reds go get themselves an infielder? And quite frankly, that would be completely missing the point, because whatever they spend on the infielder is going to take away what they spend on an outfielder, and they need an outfielder. And they got plenty of infielders already on the roster.
Yeah, they actually, I mean, if we're being honest, they need 2 outfielders. If you look at this thing, because I think they're going to need Spencer Steer elsewhere. So even if you go get a big name, if they go get me Anthony Santander, if they go get Teoscar Hernandez, even if they go get Tyler O'Neill, then
Jurickson Profar.
Yeah. Profar is another one. I mean, I'm less on Profar, but some of the comment section, you guys are great. You've won me over a little bit, hyping up Profar. But you look at that, and if you go get one of those guys, you still are going to have to play Spencer Steer in the outfield, or you move Spencer Steer, and you're going to have to then go sign probably a really good right-handed piece of a platoon to pair up with Jake Fraley. I think that's the right move. A big name, right-handed, power-hitting outfielder, and then another guy that's pretty good against left-handed pitching that you pair up with Jake Fraley. And then that frees up Spencer Steer. And then you're back to a crowded infield again if everybody's healthy. I think there's some things that are going to be a little, I guess, a painful pill to swallow on the infield. And I get why people are saying this. Nobody knows what CES is going to be able to do. Nobody knows if Noelvi Marte is going to be able to rebound, and he's looked terrible this winter thus far. So I get it. I get why people are saying that, but there's absolutely no reason. I was kind of baffled that people even leaned into this sign an infielder talk, because you can sign all the infielders you want, and unless the plan is an outfield of, Spencer Steer, Matt McLean, and TJ Friedel, which I think is a total failure on Nick Krall's part, if that were the outfield, then you can't, there's no room for another infielder. You would have to find somebody that would be willing to take Jeimer Candelario off your hands. You'd have to find, you'd have to not have CES be around for most of the year. You'd have to be able to say to yourself, there's no way Noelvi Marte is playing on this team. And I don't know if the Reds are willing to say all of those things. So there's simply just no room for another infielder. It's got to be outfielders.
Yeah, because the objective part of this isn't even just, us making a take or anything. The objective part, let's list out the infielders. You got 2 catchers, Tyler Stevenson and whoever ends up being the backup catcher. They haven't got that guy yet.
They don't hurry up. It might be me.
Right. You have your first baseman, who are going to be CES and Jeimer Candelario in some shape or form. Jeimer Candelario also plays third base, and he does DH. But you've got 2 guys there listed at first base. You've got Matt McLean at second, so I'm up to 5 guys. Then you got 6 with Ellie, 7 with Noelvi Marte. You get 13 position players. But you've also got to have at least 3 outfielders, definitely no less than 4 outfielders. So you're up to 11 players right there. Oh, I didn't mention Santiago Espinal, so now you got 12. Quite frankly, I'd feel much better if they had 5 outfielders. And then you could use Spencer Steer as that.
And if Jake Fraley is on this team, Jeff, if Jake Fraley is on this team, and we want Jake Fraley on this team, if he's on this team, you have to have 5 outfielders, because you have to have a right-handed pair for him. You have to.
Yes. And maybe you could make the case that Spencer Steer is that right-handed half, and you get an everyday right-handed outfielder to play right field. And that could work. But at the same time, if you sign an infielder, if you make a move for a major league infielder, then you are taking away a spot from a weak position group already. The Reds don't need to weaken their outfield any more than it's already been. It's been weak for years. I mean, we've had years where Jesse Winker has seen time in center field. We've seen Santiago Espinal and Tyler Stevenson play the outfield. You don't do that if you have good outfielders. Go get yourself some good outfielders. Stop going and adding more infielders when you do not need them. Jeimer Candelario is the perfect example of this, where it was like last year, we squinted really hard to see, okay, well, he fits on this roster, and he fits as like insurance for first and third base and for designated hitter. But quite frankly, if you were to look at him in a vacuum and individually analyze his 2024 season, you're looking at 2025 and saying, you got to prove something. You got to bounce back a little bit. So it's not as even as if the insurance is a sure thing here. So do you really want to go spend more money on the infield when you've already got plenty of guys that you're like, CES needs to break out. Noelvi Marte needs to break out. Jamer Candelario needs to bounce back. Santiago Espinal is a bench guy. We know that. We don't need to see him play every day. Matt McClain's got to prove that he's healthy. Ellie De La Cruz needs to take that step forward. He's got potential, but he's not the superstar that we see just yet. So all of this is being said as you're going to go get another guy to add to that group. It doesn't make any sense when you've got an outfield that is begging, pleading for any sort of help whatsoever.
Yeah, and I'll do you one better. I think that Jamer Candelario is the starting third baseman. You know, we've had this talk. I'm sticking with that. I think opening day he starts at third base, and
Right.
and what that means is that.
But that means Noelvi Marte then becomes the back. Yeah.
Or you counting on Spencer Steer being on the infield, right? Like Noelvi
Right.
Marte may not be in that equation. And if Matt McClain can only DH, Spencer Steer will tell you his best spot is second base. If CES can't go, if the scar tissue is bothering him, or they only want to use him at DH, Spencer Steer is your probably best defensive first baseman on the roster right now. So, and none of those involve him being in left field. So I can see a real scenario where if they go follow the outfield plan of sign two guys, Spencer Steer's predominantly an infielder in 2025. And I kind of like that. And I know you love that because I can't tell you the number of times I've heard you jump up and down on the please, for the love of God, let me never see him chase a fly ball again. So I see this. And I don't think we have to squint. You know, sometimes we're like, well, if they do this and you turn your head sideways and you squint a little bit,
Turn the lights down low,
and there's a full moon, and then maybe, you know, we don't have to do that. This looks very viable that Spencer Steer could be just an infield piece at different spots at different times to kind of help whoever might be ailing at the moment. And you signed your outfielders. It feels like a no-brainer to me, and it feels like we shouldn't have to explain this like we're having to explain this, because the infield is not the need. And I don't understand why everybody latched onto this. I don't see it. I don't get it. If you're in the comment section and if you can make a reasoned case for why it should be an infielder, I would love to hear it.
Yeah. And I've got some more thoughts. I definitely want to dive into this because I think this links back to that Fangraphs bit. You remember Fangraphs had a thing that said the Reds, if they go and they make moves, they're going to displace young players, which they're not going to do. And we said, well, that's not the case in the outfield. That is the case in the infield. And if you believe that Noelvi Marte should start in AAA next year, well, then I have a kind of a bit of a congruency here where it's like if Noelvi Marte should start in AAA next year, then CES should start in AAA next year. And then if that's the case, there's also the camp that says, well, Matt McClain probably is DHing for the first month of the season. Now we're saying you got to rebuild the infield. It's not just one infielder. If you say you need to get one infielder, you say you need to get 2 or 3 infielders, and the Reds aren't going to do that. And they don't need to do that. That's an overreaction to what happened last year. Guys are going to bounce back. Guys are going to break out. The Reds need outfielders, and that is where they should focus. But you know what, Steve? We are live, and we are coming up on our favorite part of the show where we dive into the questions in the comments. And I said jive, not dive, but that sort of works anyway. That's what we're going to do. Coming up next.
Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And while you're there, check out next year's World Series odds. Those Reds, 60-1 odds might be worth putting a few bucks on them to win it all in 2025. Just saying, might be a good time to get on that. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets backs if your first bet of $5 wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thanks for watching us live here on YouTube. We appreciate you. If you can't catch us live or you can't watch us on YouTube, don't forget you can take us with you on the road. We are on pretty much every single audio podcasting platform there is. And if we're not on one you want us to be on, shoot Jeff a message. I think he can make it happen. All right, Jeff, it's our favorite time of the lives. Let's get into the comments. There's been lots of chat going on while we've been talking. Guys, if you had questions, they're farther back. Put them in again. We'll try and get to them. Let's do a fun one just to start, Jeff, because people keep talking about when do the Reds sign Juan Soto? When do we get Juan Soto?
Tomorrow.
What can we do to get Juan Soto? It doesn't fit in the budget anymore. You know, you and I wanted to talk about this just for a second because we did that whole, if you squint, turn your head sideways and look for the blue moon and do the thing. Here's how the Reds can sign Juan Soto because of the money, right? They cut this much money. They've got this much room. They offer this deal. You could get him. Yeah, the money's not there based on what we've been told by the team that the budget is going to look like. So unfortunately, I think this is the moment where we retire the shtick of the Reds might be able to go get Juan Soto. That ship has sailed.
Right, and I think there's a second part of this that makes it even less likely. Like, there's already a less than 1% chance of it happening, but the thing that makes it a 0% chance of happening is not just the AAV. It's not just how much he would be making per year. It's the number of years he's looking for. Mm-hmm. The Reds are not going to give out a 10-year contract. That's just not going to happen. I don't ever foresee them doing that again. I think that they did that for Joey Votto. There was a part of them that wished they could have done a little bit shorter of a contract, but I don't foresee them ever doing that again. I think that the most we'll ever see them give out is like a 6 or 7 year deal, and even that feels like a stretch for what the Reds are going to offer, at least under this current ownership group. As long as this current ownership group controls the Reds, we're not going to see a 10-year deal. And I think Juan Soto is going to go for 10 years. He might go for 11 or 12. Like, this is going to be his final year in free agency. He's going to get all he can. And there's a lot of folks, and I don't think that they're being hyperbolic with it. There's a lot of folks that saying he's going to get like $700 million. Are you kidding me? The Reds ain't ever going to sign anybody for $700 million. And they're definitely not going to sign somebody for 10 or more years, which is what it's going to take to get Juan Soto. So as much as I even kind of broached the idea, you know, as the offseason was beginning for the Reds, it was a little bit more of a, yeah, it's, you know, the chances are better than 0, but they're less than 1.
Telling me there's a chance. Now there's not. This from Matt Gibson. Matt says, innings being an issue with this rotation. Do you ever see the Reds using a 6-man rotation? That's my thing. I love the idea of a 6-man rotation. I think if somebody was going to do it, we've seen it already. I don't think people are going to do it just because the roster rules say that you have to sacrifice a reliever for that. With a 13,
you can only have 13
pitcher cap.
It doesn't matter what their title is, but you can only have 13 pitchers.
So you'd have to sacrifice a reliever for that. So I don't see it happening. I think what you're looking at is you're looking at a rotation that has, you know, Hunter Green. It has Lodolo, Singer, Abbott, and Martinez. Those are your 5. Yeah. You know, what about Rhett Lauder is the thing, right? Well, 0 waves on it. Lauder should be your first guy up. He's your spot starter. I think Derek Johnson has his work cut out for him in 2025 because what I foresee, the way that it works in my head, is you've got Rhett Lauder down at Louisville. You're keeping an eye on the chases, chasing their dream or whatever we're going to do with that. Chase Petty and Chase Burns.
Chase to the Reds.
Chase to the something. You're looking at those guys. You've got Rhett Lauder, who is your 6th man. But what I think Derek Johnson needs to do, and injuries are going to happen. Somebody's going to get tweaked. They're going to need to skip. But also, I think Derek Johnson really needs to be dialed in on load management from the first week of the season and strategically skip starts for guys because Hunter Green's not getting to 32. Lodolo's definitely not getting to 32. Singer might get you to 32 again. He just did it. So you can be a little less judicious with what you're doing with him. Abbott's going to need you to skip some turns. So if you look at that, you strategically skip turns, and that's where Rhett Lauder fits in. So it's a 6-man rotation, but not an every 6th day kind of thing. You're gonna have to piecemeal Rhett Lauder's work out a little bit. But I think that's the best way to handle those 6 guys moving through the season. Because let's say the Reds have another miracle year like they had whatever year. What was it? The year that they only used 5 starting pitch?
2012, they only used
Let's
5
say,
plus Todd
let's
Redmond.
say another miracle year happens and nobody gets hurt, where you still should, if you have any inkling of an idea of being a postseason team and wanting everybody in this rotation to still have innings on their arms, somewhere along the way, you need that 6th guy. You need to skip turns. So I hope that Derek Johnson does that. I hope he's smart about it.
Steve, how many pitchers started at least 5 games for the Reds last year?
10, 12.
10 pitchers started at least 5 games for the Reds. 7 pitchers started at least 10 games for the Reds. Now, it's a little bit early to be making predictions, but I'm going to make one prediction right now. Rhett Lauder is going to pitch somewhere between 15 and 20 starts. That's just how this is going to go. He's not going to be on the opening day rotation unless there is an injury that he has to fill or something like that. But he's still going to get like 15 to 20 starts. There were only 3 guys on the Reds last year that made 20 or more starts. You had Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott, and Hunter Green. Frankie Montas made 19 starts, and he wasn't here after the deadline. Graham Ashcraft made 15 starts, and he was hurt for most of the year. And Nick Martinez made 16 starts, and quite frankly, before the month of August, he only had 3. So there's an easy pick here that Rhett Lauder pitches at least 15, if not at least 20. He could pitch more than 20 starts. So I've seen some folks that have reacted negatively because of the idea that Rhett Lauder will not be on the starting rotation on opening day. I don't think that means what you think it means. That doesn't mean that the Reds are counting him out and they're not going to start him. He's going to pitch a lot next year. And I think that when it comes to the starting rotation as a whole, like Nick Martinez being here and starting the year in the starting rotation is super huge. I mean, people are worried about the $21 million and all this other stuff. Like the Angels just gave Yusei Kikuchi 3 years of $63 million. Yusei Kikuchi is a pretty comparable pitcher as a starting pitcher to Nick Martinez. So I think that it just goes to show you that if the Reds hadn't spent $21 million on Nick Martinez, they were going to have to spend something close to that to get a comparable starter. The fact they got Brady Singer on a team-controlled deal, this is probably going to be around $7 to $8 million next year, is just absolute gold.
Click the like button for me. Just click it. We love having you here. It helps push the show out to new viewers. We want to talk baseball with as many people as possible. So that helps drive it along. Share it with your friends. Share it with your family. If you know a Reds fan out there that's not watching yet, send us along to them. We'd love to have them here as well. And on that note, Jeff, get us out of here.
We will be locked on Reds every single day. Jive.
I knew you were going to say that.